Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, and with me tonight is my co-host, straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy, and I'm very excited to get the information straight from the top of law enforcement with our guest tonight.
Oh, my God. You know something? I hit a home run. I didn't think these guys would ever be able to be on the show together because, first of all, they're both Irish. So grabbing them out of the gin mill isn't an easy thing to do, you know? But here we are, though. Here I am because usually I'm with a lot of Italians. So I got two of my Irish paisans
I'm
here
outnumbered.
tonight. And we got from Nassau County, the current police commissioner, Patrick Ryder. Pat, so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Bill, and this should be a good show.
It's going to be great. We'll see. I hope Ed comes through, but it should be a great show. And Ed Hartnett, the former police commissioner of Yonkers, as they say in the Spanish neighborhoods, Yonkers. And he was also an NYPD chief, and he's a hell of an Irishman. How you doing tonight, Ed?
I'm well, but I think it was a mistake. I thought I was signing on for the Rachel Maddow show.
Yeah.
I don't know how this happened, but
I don't think so. Look, we're going to have a lot of laughs tonight, but we're going to have some serious moments too. We're going to talk a lot about crime. But first, let's go to the Police Off the Cuff song, and we'll be right back, guys, with Patrick Ryder, Nassau County Police Commissioner, and former Yonkers PC, Eddie Hartnett.
It's a show with two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, one episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. I'm so excited tonight because we have so much to talk about. These are like the weirdest times. Crime is exploding, not just in New York City, but all over the country. And it's specifically gun crime. But us Comstat and broken window style policing aficionados can point to that as going away from that for 8 years in New York City and in other parts of the country. And I think we can directly draw a correlation to moving away from broken window style policing to this new woke style, which is, I don't know what it is. It's not prosecuting incarceration. It's not making arrests for small crimes. And that's, I think, hurting cities throughout the country. Ed, what are your feelings on some of these things I just brought up?
you know, thankfully, I've done some police consulting after I left law enforcement usually with the Bill Bratton teams in Oakland, Detroit, St. Louis, Baltimore, and, tough places. And the cops are working hard under terrible conditions at times. And, they were doing their best. But now just those cities and others, as you mentioned, are truly up against it. I mean, it used to be if your crime was down, your arrest could be down because as long as crime is going down. But now, crime is going up and arrests have gone way down. So, what's the formula? I mean, police executives now have a lot on their plate. And of course, Pat leading a huge department here in New York State, truly up against it.
There's on the dais there's the new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. Behind him is the chief of the department, Chief Corey. And there's, of course, Pat Lynch. And, of course, we have Keechant Sewell from Nassau County, the former chief of detectives. And to tell you the truth, I think she's been very impressive. And I wish Adams would let her do the job and he should back off and be the mayor and let her be the police commissioner, because it seems like every police moment he's there. That's her chance to shine. Pat, feelings?
I've had the opportunity to promote Keechant twice. to a 1-star, 2-star, and then my chief of detectives. She's a professional. She respects and loves her cops. She'll do what's right. And you hope that they will let her run the job, as she knows that she should run it and how to run it. She's intelligent. She presents well. She's articulate, and she's been in the street. She's a cop. She's been out there working with her cops. So that's important. You get the right message to the team that we're backing you up. So far, Adams has been saying the right things. So let's see when it gets bad and when it really starts to get bad, and it's pretty bad right now. But what way and what direction they go? But she's up for the test. She'll stand it.
Phil and I were at the funeral for now Detective Moore, promoted posthumously. But I had thought Keyshawn hit the ball out of the park with her speech, and I thought it was sincere. She was well spoken. She was strong, and that's what cops need. They need a role model who's strong, who's going to stand up for them, and that knows what they're up against. And as I said, Phil and I were in the church and we heard her speak, and I watched the first funeral at home, streamed that one, and same thing. She gave the best speech, I think, out of everyone there. Phil, thoughts?
Yeah, well, listen, anytime there's a change in City Hall with the new mayor, we always hold our breath to wait to see who the police commissioner is going to be. It's a civilian title. When Sewell was named as going to be the police commissioner, I got a call from a retired chief, and he gave me the thumbs up, said he heard a lot of good things about her. Obviously, Commissioner Ryan, who's here today with us, is saying the same thing. She has shown herself to be impressive in her speech at the funeral. Obviously, some of the things she said sounds like she's going to get behind the cops, and I've been calling for that for a long time. The cops got to do their job, but they need the backing of the mayor and the police commissioner. There's going to be incidents that might fall into a gray area or questionable, and the investigations will always determine how those things will go. But right now, morale is at a very low point. You can't even get people to take the job. It's just terrible what we've gone through over the last couple of years, that officers are being abused in the streets. So with the right hierarchy, the mayor and the police commissioner, I think everyone here on the panel is coming up with the same idea. Mayor Adams needs to let the police commissioner run the police department. She knows what to do. The tools are right there. Let's start having some reduction in crime. Let's do what we have to do. We all know broken windows policy, and up from there.
You're just seeing on the screen is a picture of a guy pulling a gun out and shooting. And the amazing thing about the shootings lately is that not only does the guy shooting at the alleged target have a gun, but the people being shot at return fire all the time, which is a sign that there are too many damn guns on the street. And one of the biggest reasons for that is the dissolvement of anti-crime. And Adams spoke about putting these neighborhood safety teams. He dipped his toe in the water, stopped the bullshit. Anti-crime needs to be in plain clothes. They don't need to have police vests on announcing who they are. But he's afraid. He's afraid of these progressive morons that work for the city council. And he's afraid to put anti-crime back there and get the guns off the street.
Hey, Bill, if I may, I'm an old anti-crime cop from the 3-2 precinct where those 4 officers were killed. And you know yourself, I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but the anti-crime cops back then and now were the guys that could go out and catch bad guys. They were the men and women that could blend in a little bit, but they were out there hustling, hunting, and catching bad guys with guns. And they need to be back, to your point. I know they were disbanded for whatever reasons, but taking all those manhunters out of the precincts and putting them back in uniform, the bad guys see that. The bad guys watch that. So when the anti-crime guys and the street crime unit were out there stopping cars, stopping bad guys within the bounds of the Constitution, not supposedly doing anything illegal or immoral, the bad guys knew it. So they didn't carry the gun. They weren't that comfortable carrying the gun. They stashed the gun nearby. We used to always find guns in a garbage can or on top of a tire, a wheel well of a car, because they didn't feel comfortable, because they knew that, as they would say, the DTs are going to jump out and toss me. So They need to get back to something like that. Again, there was some abuses with stop and frisk, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about that later. You can't just stop and frisk everyone. As they used to always say at Comstat, it's got to be done at the right time, at the right place, for the right reasons, and the right people. So you
Well,
can't
Ed,
toss
I
everybody.
just have to stop you for 1 second, because the press are the ones that reduced stop, question, and frisk to stop and frisk. So when anyone calls it stop and frisk, we jump all over them, because that's taken 33% of this procedure away. And I mean, you know better than anyone that the frisk happens after maybe the question raises the level of suspicion to reasonable suspicion, which allows the popo to do a frisk, right? So I don't like because I think the press purposely demonizes the activity. It says stop and frisk, and then they also demonize anti-crime. Aren't they just stopping and frisking people? No,
And they also totally mislabel it. They would call it a program. It was never a program.
Right, it's not a program.
It's a tactic. It's a tactic that was used based on reasonable suspicion. They'd say you have no probable cause to stop that person. You don't need probable cause to stop the person. You need reasonable suspicion to stop the person. And as long as an experienced officer can articulate that, that's a good stop, question, or frisk situation.
Thank you for concluding the stop question part.
I know you're a pain.
I got to piggyback that a little, because I think what happened is during the Bloomberg administration, when he saw that anti-crime from doing stop, question, and frisk, they were taking a lot of guns off the street. He implemented it to be on a monthly activity report that every patrol officer. Now, it wasn't only patrol could do a stop and frisk, anti-crime, any officers that were out there, but he made patrol officers have it on their activity report, their monthly activity report. So when they got to the end of the month and they didn't have 4 or 5 stops, they were stopping just anybody. It was overused. And this is the reason that the whole thing was, put into the spotlight, and saying it was overused and violating people's civil rights. It's actually one of the best police tactics that you have out there for fighting gun violence, obviously, and possession of guns. And I was an anti-crime cop, and without stop, question, and frisk, we wouldn't have taken nearly the amount of guns that we took off the street. I was in East Flatbush, and we took plenty of guns off the street in the 80s. The fact that it was overused, yes, okay, we know about that, but it needs to be brought back. Not only did they take away, every precinct had an anti-crime team, but they took away borough crime teams, which came out of the task force, and then they took away street crime, which was a citywide anti-crime. So a lot of people that were out there, targeting people carrying guns, gone now. So this is why, as the chief said, the commissioner said, no one's afraid to carry a gun, and a lot of these guys, they're carrying them on both sides, like Billy said. So we have to really get a grip on that.
Pat, are you having the same problems in Nassau County?
Yeah, so let me add, it's stop, question, and possibly frisk. And again, they love to twist this stuff, and the media loves to play in stop and frisk, right? Which is not the way it's written. Tommy Dale, the chief from your job, came out and became a commissioner with us. And when that happened, when they pulled it back off the New York City and took it back from the cops, it was him who said to me, he goes, you know who's going to get hurt? Cops are going to get hurt now, because bad guys, just as you guys were saying a second ago, is that they know if they're going to get stopped, they're not going to carry that gun. So it may be on that tire, it may be in that bush over there behind the wall. And, the shootings won't be as quick. When we jump out of the car now and that gun is on that waistband because he's not afraid of getting frisked, that gun now comes out and the cop gets hurt. So there are things that need to change. What we did in Nassau County after the unrest and after the George Floyd, we pulled back our plainclothes guys. I said, just pull back just for a little bit. Let it calm down, let the waters calm down. And we went back in. It lasted about a month and a half, and we were so busy on protest anyhow, that about 2.5 months into it, we rolled them back in. And I've taken more guns off the street in Nassau County this year alone than I've taken in the past 10 years in the first month of the year. Guns are all over the place, and that's because they know there's no consequence. They're going to get locked up. They're going to see the judge in the morning, and they're walking out, right, because of bail reform. There's no bail because it's nonviolent. I didn't shoot nobody. I was just carrying my loaded handgun that I got. So that's the problem.
Pat, I wanted to say something too, because through great fanfare, I think last week, President Biden came to New York on Thursday and they had this gun symposium with the governor. It was an out-and-out joke. I mean, first of all, Hochul doesn't even know what a gun is. You know, she's sitting there, and same thing with Adams. And it's the same Democrat talking points of it's the gun, not the guy pulling the trigger. The iron pipeline. No, stop the bullshit. That you've been talking this since 1960. It's the guy you don't want to prosecute, the guy pulling the trigger. How is the gun responsible? It's the guy pulling the trigger, and they don't want to prosecute him.
Yeah, Bill, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't want to turn this into a political thing too much, but I saw that. I saw the president come, and listen, it's always been an honor if the president comes to headquarters and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, he's talking about the flow of guns. And listen, it's something that has to be addressed, obviously, but every gun company in the world could stop making guns tomorrow. And there's still guns here. What are you going to do about the guns that are here, Mr. President? The guns are here now, and they're still shooting each other and killing each other. And these guys also have terrible aim, so they shoot at the guy they want to shoot, and they hit some child or some grandmother in a window. So the guns are here now. So I heard nothing from anyone that day talking about what are we doing about crime, violent crime involving guns today.
But if you don't keep the bad guy in jail, he's just going to come out and commit more crimes.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Again, it's not the gun. I agree. We got to take these guns. But on the other side of it, it's the individual. The individual who pulled that trigger is going to be walking out of jail. He's not staying in it. That's a problem.
Well, you know, Pat, I think this was this little meme I put on before was from the summertime. And the same people that may be crying about, and we had Pat Russo on last night who runs the New York City Kids and Boxing program. And he works in the inner cities, all the communities with housing projects. And he says they want the police there. They're not like the city council and all these woke people saying defund the police. They want more police because these are the kids that are winding up dead. These are the kids wind up shooting other kids. So it's a revolving door, and they want something done about it.
Billy, could you put that back up for a second, please? I got to make a point. Look at those faces. Those are black and brown faces. This is what affects the minority community in New York and across the country. This out of control gun violence is targeted mostly towards black and brown community. So all of these leaders, they want to talk about Black Lives Matter. They're full of it. Let's talk about doing the things that need to be done in these communities, in these areas, these high crime areas. We could do stuff with the community programs like you just brought up with Pat Russo, the boxing thing to kids in boxing to keep them out of gangs and stuff. But the bottom line is without plainclothes officers, without stop and frisk, and again, without this insane bail reform that they've instituted, we have to turn that back. And if Hochul wants to make herself seem like she's all pro law enforcement, she won't even discuss revoking the bail reform law. So she's full of it too. How come they didn't talk about that? Like Commissioner Hartnett was saying, they didn't talk about that when the president was in town. The guns that are here, we're worried about the pipeline and ghost guns. That's not what's causing the problem. The guns that are in the city right now, that's what's causing the problem. And these gangbangers that aren't afraid to carry them because like Commissioner Ryder said, they're out before the paperwork is done. The officer's still in Central Booking doing the paperwork, and the perp's being released because there's no bail.
Let me just hit this one.
Violent crime has been rising over the past 2 years, with crazed, unstable people in the subways and fearless teenagers with guns. Shootings that once took place in back alleys now happen on crowded streets in the middle of the afternoon. Gang members blasting at one another with bystanders caught in the crossfire. Among the latest victims, an infant struck in the face with a stray bullet. Police officers are being shot, and unsuspecting subway riders are being attacked at random. Others are being robbed. In the past 2 months, it's become an onslaught.
Certainly the levels of safety that we saw during the last 10 years are now being reversed. And it's a serious moment. No one should undermine how serious this is.
There were 485 murders in New York City in 2021, the highest total in 10 years. There were more than 1,500 shootings, the highest in 15 years, and double the number just 2 years ago. And underground, major felonies are surging. Bronx DA Darcel Clark.
It's not just the law. It's people thinking that they can get away with whatever they want. That's where we are now, which is, really scary. Just a total disrespect for humanity.
The age at which somebody first picks up a gun is getting younger and younger and younger. We now have 12 and 13-year-olds picking up guns and carrying them. We really better focus on that.
Aborn believes Mayor Adams understands the crisis, but needs to act quickly.
I think he has a very short window to put a cap on the rise of crime. I think it will come down, but it's going to come down gradually.
Aborn is convinced that targeted anti-gun patrols can be done legally and that federal agents have a role to play.
We need to set up true interstate strike forces to go after the illegal guns coming up what we call the iron pipeline from Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, Texas, Alabama, and Georgia, and Virginia. The feds could help us do that tomorrow morning.
Darcel Clark is convinced that coordinated investigations will help turn the tide.
We're putting together investigations that are phenomenal. And once we get them now, it's going to be able to stick because every agency is working together.
And no, experts say this is not the 1970s all over again. You heard Mr. Aborn say a moment ago that the mayor has a relatively short window. He says a few months to try to stop the trend, but driving down crime in New York City, he says, will likely take the better part of a year.
It's worse than the 70s. That's the difference.
There you have it. I mean, look, guys, we came from, when New York City was the safest large city, and then we had 8 years of this disaster of a mayor named de Blasio. And all of the, we get pissed. We get emotional about this because we work so hard to bring crime down. And I was one of the people that was standing up and getting slapped at the podium at Comstat with Anamone and Maple and, back then. And we know, but we all took it because it was for the greater good. But all of that went away in 8 years of just this progressive, moronic mayor,
Listen, we were blessed in many ways because when de Blasio came in, at least he appointed Bill Bratton and then Jim O'Neill and then Dermot Shea. I mean, those guys held the line as best they could with a weak and ineffective and non-focused mayor. It's funny. We would say when you were a precinct commander, if you took over a precinct from a really sharp guy, you had a hard job. It was a tough job. If you took over from a guy who wasn't really on top of his game, it was pretty easy. And that's Eric Adams right now. He's taken over from the worst mayor in history. He can do a few things right and be a star. But as Richard Aborn said, that window's not going to be open forever. I mean, he announced a plan, apparently some kind of crime plan. I saw some of it in late January. To me, you got to walk in the door on January 1st with that plan. And you got to kick off. You got to hit the ground running. But it seems like, as we said, I'm holding out for him. I hope he does a good job. His reputation when he was in the NYPD was not as a crime fighter, but I'm hoping now that he becomes someone who espouses crime and law and order, because that's what he's saying. So I'm gonna hope that he keeps to his word.
Yes, absolutely. He didn't have the reputation of being a crime fighter, correct, 100%. But I think he knows what needs to be done. I mean, he was on the job for 22 years. He was rank of captain. He went through the ranks. He knows what tools he has at his fingertips. It's really about, implementing along with Commissioner Sewell. And, they could really, like you said, coming behind de Blasio, he could just hang around and he's going to look great. But he also has an opportunity to become a superstar if he can really bring down crime. And he's got the opportunity. He's got the tools. It's just a matter of whether or not he's got the guts to implement it.
Pat Ryder, I want to direct this towards you. One of the biggest problems in New York City right now, besides all this gun crime, is the mentally ill people all over the streets of the city, inhabiting the subways as if it's their private condo, and the filth and the disgustingness underground. Yeah, and you have all these progressives like, wear a mask. You got guys with boll weevils crawling on them in the subway, and they don't mention that. And the filth and it's do something. People should not be living on the street.
No, the mental health crisis in this country is out of control. And a lot of it is drug related. A lot of it is alcohol related. A lot of it is just the homelessness now after living on the streets. And, we spent the whole year and a half with this pandemic. The problem is they were always there. but the city controlled it. The city, I sat there. I had lunch today with Terry Monahan, and we were talking. Years ago, we would remove them. We'd get them into the shelter. We get them to an area where we can get them help. Now, you don't want to ask. You don't want to touch. You don't want to speak. If you go anywhere near them, you're afraid something's going to happen, that you're going to get jammed up. And then then they're going to intervene with the social worker. Bring the social worker in. 96% of the cases that we handle with mental health issues end up in a hospital. Social worker says that's not a good number. You should bring that number down. Okay, I'll bring the number down, but when I'm responding, it's my scene. I'm in charge. And if we're not using violence, and nobody, I don't care how much schooling you went to, nobody understands mental health issues than New York City cops or county cops, because we speak to these people all the time. We deal with them constantly, and we know what rises them up and what brings them down. And, that's the world we live in. People don't realize. You drive down the street, you see, hey, there's Tony. Hey, Tony. And you start talking. And that's what we do that we're so good at. But, the experts are going to come in now, and they want to get in the car, and they want to go to the call with you and see if they can make it better. In our experience out here, we're finding that every time they come, they're like, okay, you guys got this. When it's all under control, then bring us in. Okay, perfect. And that's what we're doing, and it's working very well out here in Nassau.
I think that people that don't deal with mentally ill people, or EDPs as we know them, emotionally disturbed persons, now they even put a euphemism. They soften that. Now it's emotionally distressed. I don't know what disturbed and distressed, how much different, but they want to make it a kinder, gentler 3-letter word, the emotionally distressed person. All right, they're mentally ill. And Pat, you hit it on the head. That word homeless is the coverall. That's not what it is. It's mentally ill, alcohol and drug addicted, and the last word should be homeless as a result of the prior 3 things we just spoke about.
It's funny in the current environment, you're always saying the wrong thing. When we first came on, Bill, right over the radio, they'd say, go to the corner of walk and don't walk. There's a psycho. They would say psycho right over the radio. Then they made it EDP, but now
correct.
I read you're not even supposed to say homeless. Now you're supposed to say houseless, because homeless is insulting. So you don't know what to say. But again,
Ed, I just heard of an amazing one recently. I'm sure you heard it. They have food insecurity. Food insecurity. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, the poor guy is starving, but he has food insecurity. But it's like they get themselves bogged down in semantics instead of doing something to help these folks. I mean, NYPD had a pretty active, productive homeless outreach unit, and it was abolished because it was deemed that they were too much of a police state, I guess. But they were doing some good, proactive work, getting these people the help they need, getting them off the street, stopping them at times from freezing to death. And now, hopefully, they'll get that back.
Homeless outreach was very effective. I mean, they went into the subways, and where there's hundreds of people living in the subways in the New York City subway system, and they would get them, like you said, into either a shelter, or if they needed hospitalization or programs. And then I think the social workers felt that they were being cut out of it, and whatever reason, I don't know if it had to do when they cut anti-crime, they cut it out. And when they called them homeless, when you see an attack on the subway, they say, "Oh, it was a homeless individual." Homeless. Most people think homeless, well, somebody lost their job during the pandemic and they're homeless. No, these are people that have serious mental illness, serious drug addiction. It's not somebody that just lost their job and they decided to go live on the subway. It's 99% of the time, they have serious mental health issues or serious drug addiction. And when they're in that, that stupor, whether they're not taking their medication or they're high on drugs or they're strung out from drugs, they become violent. And that's when the violence happens in the subway system. So, they're labeling them one thing and it's really something totally different.
Yeah, we've all gone to those jobs where the guy's wrecking his house and you say, what happened? Well, he's fine, but he stopped taking his medicine. A lot of these folks are on medicine. They stop taking their medicine and then they go crazy and they harm themselves and harm someone else.
Yeah, like we were talking before, that the transit used to have that homeless outreach where they would actually remove everyone from the subway. But now it seems it's okay to live on a subway car at the expense of the tax-paying and the paying customers that are with the MTA. And the other thing is they don't prosecute people anymore for jumping the turnstiles. Oh. So why is anyone paying? This whole thing is it's a recipe for disaster, you know?
Yeah, the Fairbeat thing, they used to, I'm sorry, they used to, some current politicians, the one from Long Island City, I don't like to say her little cute name, she tried to paint this picture that, well, the people jumping the turnstile are people who can't afford to ride the train. If you talk to transit cops, everybody they grab jumping the turnstile has 20, 40, 50, 100 bucks in their pocket. They could pay. And then as Jack Maple, the late, great Jack Maple, the architect of Comstat, would say all the time, when you stop them, these guys are jumping the turnstile not just to commute to work. They're jumping into the system to commit crime. So you can stop them at the gate, arrest them at the gate, and lock them up for the fare beat, and you prevent crime from happening on the train. And that seems to be, again, now it's politically incorrect.
Pat, you had something to say?
Sorry, Pat.
No, it doesn't help when you get DAs like this guy in Manhattan who's going to just let the door open, just let him go. And look, we were all cops in the 80s, right? And I was walking a foot post in Bed-Stuy in 1984, 85. And that was the revolving door of the crack wars. But at least back then, if you got collared with a gun in the city of New York, it was a mandatory 1 to 3 years. Now you're out the door in the morning. It's unheard of. And the quality of life that when we talk about broken windows never broke, right? We kind of messed it up a little bit, but broken windows, it's all about people want. They want the quality. They don't want the come out and find their car graffitied or their tires slashed or their windows broken. They want to be able to come out and go about their day. That's why they pay those taxes. But unfortunately, when you don't lock or you don't prosecute somebody for jumping a turnstile, taking a crap right on the middle of the platform, and then going in and pushing some woman into a train, what are we doing? What is the and that's when you start getting that defeatist attitude by our police officers. I got to tell you, and everything the city PD has been through, these cops are still doing their job, and they deserve more credit than they're getting. And the crime issue is because they're not letting them do some of the things like the anti-crime days and stuff like that. You take your best cops, you give them an advantage over the bad guy, they're going to catch the bad guy. If you turn around and you put everybody back in uniform, I don't have the advantage no more. The bad guy does. And that's when we make a mistake.
100%. Let me just play a little bit of this.
Where his widow called him out.
We are not safe anymore. I know you were tired of these laws, especially the ones from the new DA. I hope he's watching you speak through me right now.
Are being read the Riot Act by Governor Kathy Hochul.
We need to do more to protect public safety.
Whatever the reason, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has backed off his earlier day one memo that provoked demands for his ouster. Seems instead of being the softer, gentler prosecutor he campaigned on, he apparently now wants to be the new sheriff of Manhattan. His tough on crime stance in this new memo telling his staff violence against police officers will not be tolerated. Gun possession cases are a key part of our plan for public safety. People walking the streets with guns will be prosecuted and held accountable. A commercial robbery with a gun will be charged as a felony, whether or not the gun is operable, loaded, or a realistic imitation. We also will use gun possession cases as an opportunity to trace the source of illegal guns and build cases against gun traffickers.
It was amazing how he found religion after that, the funeral of the officer, when his wife embarrassed him. And then the governor, who also is another progressive, sitting in the front row, was like, oh, the midterms are this November. We better do something about crime because we sat on our ass for the past 4 years and did nothing. So maybe I better get to this DA and tell him he can't do these decarceral policies that George Soros gave him $1 million to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. That kid, I grew up in Washington Heights, just one neighborhood north of him. He grew up in Harlem. And, on paper, I look at this guy and I say, wow, guy pulled himself up by his bootstraps, went to Harvard Law, still lives in Harlem. I'm thinking, 80-something% of the people voted for him. And then he gets into office and he campaigned on it too, with all this stuff that now he's backtracking on. Those quotes you just showed, that should have been his memo when he first came in. And that memo really is unnecessary. That's the law. He's just saying we're going to enforce the law. Well, the law is in the penal law, pal. Enforce it. You have a criminal procedure law. That's the rules and procedures right there.
Right. Well, the legislature makes the law. He's supposed to prosecute the law when it gets violated. And that 10-page memo he wrote to his staff, I mean, it was outrageous. It was absolutely outrageous.
He's supposed to be the voice of the victims. He's supposed to give them a voice, give them hope. And in turn, he turned around and he just sold them all out for the bad guy. He gave the bad guy more than he gives the victims. That's where we start to lose control of society, is when we let the criminals run the environment, right? And instead of taking care of our victims and defending them.
And if you go to any precinct in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Harlem, wherever, precinct commanders, I've been to those meetings. Pat, you've been to those meetings. You go to meetings in church basements and school cafeterias. The folks in those neighborhoods, they want the same thing everybody else wants. They want safety, security. They want their kids to be safe going to school. They don't want some jerk outside drinking beer, smoking weed, playing his radio too loud. All that broken window stuff. These people want more policing, not less. These folks are up against it in some of these neighborhoods and trying to do the best they can, trying to make ends meet. Now they got to worry about, getting killed outside their building. And the DA, up until recently, is sounding, to Pat's great point, that the victim is not even in the factor at all. It's not even in the picture. It's all about doing mass incarceration and closing Rikers Island. What about the victim? Every stat, every number. I used to tell my guys, every crime stat has a person attached to it. And if your numbers are good or bad, no matter what your numbers are, there are people attached to every one of those numbers. And the DA seems to have forgotten that.
100%. I remember on the side of the radio cars, it used to say quality of life. Remember that?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that?
Oh, yeah, that's taboo now at times.
Quality of life went out the broken window.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I got to say, Bragg is the extreme, but the other DAs in the city are not far behind. They stopped, prosecuting jumping the turnstile, marijuana in public, drinking in public, urinating in public. They prostitution. I mean, prostitution. That's how we interdict and help, kids that have been sucked into this world of prostitution by pimps and stuff. And he doesn't even want to prosecute those. And as well as the other boroughs too. Those other DAs, they're not escaping this either. I'm calling them out as well. We have laws on the books, and they're there for a reason. You're the district attorney that's supposed to prosecute the law, but now you're picking and choosing. No, that's for the legislation to do. But I think that, he may have backed off a little bit, but I still don't trust that it's going to get any better, any quicker. Several of his top-notch prosecutors have resigned. The DA's office in Manhattan sounds like it's in total disarray. We got to start with that bail reform. Start there and work our way down from the state.
When you have lawlessness like they have now, you don't have an economy, you don't have a business, you don't have real estate, you don't have value. They're going to lose it all in the city of New York if they don't get control of the crime problem. The crime problem, basically, we kind of spin everything off of that. You're not going to have successful people spending their money on real estate. We've already seen the value of real estate come down because of the pandemic. We found that people could work at home and get them just as productive. So the value already came down. Now you're going to turn around and it's going to be crime-ridden, that people don't want to walk in and go in the subway. Not good.
Outrageous. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. We appreciate your support. If you want to support us, we have a Patreon. In fact, Ed Hartnett's a member there. He's been supporting us for 2 years. And although I see the Brinks truck pull up to his house twice a month.
I'm the George Soros. I'm the George Soros of Patreon.
That's right. He's supporting us for over 2 years. And we also
amazing.
have a membership, YouTube members and Beyond Chalmers.
Took out a second mortgage to be a member of Patreon. It's well worth it.
That's right.
All the benefits I get from it, it's so worth it.
Duty Ron, thank you so much for a $20 super chat. Great guest, Sergeant Cannon. Thank you to be the best police commissioner in Nassau County you've seen in a long time. As a resident, I appreciate the work his members are doing. Love to have him on my show, Respect for Nassau County Police. There's a big kudo to you, Pat. And Pat, I had your brother on the show who runs the Feel Good Foundation,
yes.
Brother Jim, and a great guy, former NYPD cop. And it's all in the family. And your cousin, Jim Cohn, who was the inspector, the CO of aviation, And I'll
That's
go
your
even
cousin?
further.
Jimmy Cohn's your cousin?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
And you know what else? Jack Cohn is the quarterback of Notre Dame. So these
That's
guys
right.
have some good pedigree there. You know?
Yeah.
And
Oh, I
my
love Jimmy.
I'll give a little plug. My son graduates from my academy next week.
Very
That's
good.
great.
Very good.
Fantastic.
Very good. And my boy has 17 years on the NYPD. He's in ESU. I'm very proud of him.
That's
That's
fantastic.
great to know. Good bloodlines here, Billy. We got some good bloodlines on our show today.
And Eddie, how those cloth bags that Brinks drops off at your house, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars are in each bag?
I tell you, man, I hurt my back.
That's
Terrible.
great.
Terrible.
You know what I
I'm
want to talk
trying to make
about?
my Patreon donation. So
Yeah, I better shut up. He's going to quit. One of the things I want to bring up, because it's been a problem all over the place now, and we just saw it in Westchester, and it's these smash and grabs.
Smash and grab.
And it's like it's happening. And when we talk about broken windows and going after little crimes, this is a result of not prosecuting the lower level crimes, and it's really outrageous. And it's about to destroy a society, destroy commerce, destroy capitalism, whatever you want to call it. Here's the smash and grab the other day in a store in Westchester where they took $300,000 worth of watches by breaking the counter with a hammer.
Who walked into the Tourneau store in the Westchester Mall Sunday morning and smashed a display case with hammers. The suspects got away with 7 watches worth more than $300,000.
Now, Pat, I know you're getting this in Nassau County too. Is it also a result of the decarceral policies of district attorneys?
You watched that. There was a video that someone took as they were coming out in that mall when they stole these pocketbooks last week. I think that was up in Westchester.
Yes.
And they're running out of the store, and everybody's just standing back. They're just letting them go with it. You know, they're yelling at it, calling them animals and everything else. But if you have this lawlessness, they're going to close their business, and then you have no economy. When you look at when CVS, I believe, is closing up in the city of New York, they're just like, we can't run a business. People just come in, they steal, and they walk right out. We can't have. This is the one.
That's what you, Jim, on the screen is what you were referring to. Well, you can narrate it yourself.
Yeah, and they grabbed the pocketbooks, $1,000 pocketbooks, and they ran. And because after that, then nobody wants to chase them. You saw the security guard; he just backs
He
up.
stood there. Yeah, he didn't do a thing.
Nah,
and sadly, I spent some time in that business, and I worked with large retail across the country, and a lot of them have that policy even before all this, where they say don't chase, don't get in their way, don't put your hands on them. So that's part of the problem. And then a lot of these retail will not prosecute. So it's a double-edged sword. But this kind of lawlessness is basically all we're talking about right now. Is there's a sense that I can do whatever I want, but there'll be no consequence. Yeah,
the malls will worry about lawsuits and stuff like that. They don't want to be caught up in that. And you have an unarmed security guard. I mean, he didn't even get on his radio. I mean, they should have at least radioed for help, maybe taking pictures of these guys, to help try and identify them. But it's ridiculous.
And there's a feeling too that we'll get them later. We'll see them. They're going to be selling it on eBay. The cow's already out of the barn at that point.
Yeah.
We had some retail stores that I won't name them here, but one of them turned around and refused to sign the report to have them arrested. I go, you're not going to sign this after my cop went out and tackled the person. You're not going to go sign this. No, we're not going to sign it. It's store policy.
It's pretty common. Yeah. It's amazing.
When I was in Intel, we had a policy. We were actually, it was before 9/11 happened. We were trying to get information on terrorism and stuff like that. So we were targeting these small bodegas. We would go to CVS and they would give us some items that are, frequently stolen. They would sign them out to us, and then we would go into the store and try to sell it to them. Then we would arrest whoever it was that bought it. We would let them know that it was stolen merchandise. I'm trying to sell it. And then we arrest them to try and get intel out of them. And, obviously we would return the merchandise back to the stores. We would go to the stores where there was a big shoplifting problem. So that's one way that possibly you can, put a stop to it, that you're putting a hurt on wherever they're selling it, whether they're selling it on the street or they're selling it to bodegas. A lot of times they would steal, over-the-counter medications and CVS, Rite Aid, and then sell it to the bodegas that are obviously greatly discounted price. And so there was some enforcement there that we did. We did develop some information. We were targeting to try and they were funding terrorism overseas, and then 9/11 happened, and that all kind of got put on the side. But there's different ways that we can obviously attack this and put a stop to it.
Guys, on the screen here, this is a big problem they're having in California. They're having them break into these cargo trains, and they just throw whatever they don't want on the tracks. And this is a national security problem, if you ask me. So what is going on? Like, they could be stealing guns. Some of these trains carry guns. They could be stealing high-tech equipment, computers, things like that. And again, this has a far-reaching problem for the entire nation.
A lot of evidence that we ship around the country now to get tested is in those trucks, and now they're getting stolen, which is going to, again, a rape case, a murder case is now going to be jeopardized because we lost it because of that stuff. You got to police that.
That's a great point. You have evidence traveling across the country, and these savages, they're not going to want that. They're going for high-end equipment, whether it be electronics, clothing, whatever. They find something like that, they're just going to toss it. The chain of evidence is broke, and it's not good anymore. I mean, there's so many factors that that these different thefts are that they affect, and you have areas of the United States where you could drive through a neighborhood, 25 miles, and you're not going to find the CVS because they're all closed up. And out in San Francisco, I believe it is, whether it be Rite Aid, CVS, Walgreens, whatever, you can't find a drugstore to buy aspirins because they're pilfered. They close up in those areas.
On the screen, what you're seeing here is this happened on Long Island.
Walked into
a
their
woman
Deer
was
Park
followed
house to check on autistic
from the mall, and she bought a high-end pocketbook or something. They pulled it right up into her driveway, broke the window of her van, and took her property. So all of this is all because they're not prosecuting these people. It's outrageous.
And for the record, that was Suffolk County, not Nassau.
Exactly.
I know. I did.
I was going to say that, Pat.
I was going to say that because I saw
going on
Rodney Harrison.
in there, so I got you. I was going to say that. Yeah. But again, it's all about the consequence. Like you talk about bail reform, and listen, bail had to be reformed in a way. It had to be tweaked. I mean, I used to have a problem myself with some 17-year-old kid sitting in Rikers Island for 2.5 years with an open case. He couldn't make bail, and maybe he beat that case, or maybe the case would just fall apart. But that guy's in jail for 2.5 years. So bail had to be fixed. I mean, but it's like bringing your car in to get a flat fixed, and they take off all 4 tires. It didn't need the massive overhaul that they gave it, and now it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Phil, I just want you to take a quick break with do Joe Murray's little commercial here.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you could email Joe at jmurray-law.com. Joe's a great guy, and he has a podcast called Allegedly Guilty. Look him up.
I listen, Joe's a good guy, and I tell you what, in his day, Joe was a hell of a boxer.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
He proved that in the 10th squad.
Yeah, and I know the guy he hit, and the guy deserved it.
That's right. You told me that story. I just want to get back to now. You guys,
and I hope he's listening.
You guys are obviously 2 of the best law enforcement minds in the country. And we have those people in the NYPD. Keith Chansuel, former chief of detectives in Nassau County. I believe it's the chief of department, Kenny Corey. All these guys are probably chomping at the bit because they were children of Comstat. And they were children raised on broken windows policing. And the fact that we're not going back to that full force, because we have the blueprint in place. We know how to drop crime. We've done it before. We could do it again. We had Bill Bratton. We have all of these experts. We're not doing it because of politics.
100%.
It's sad. I've seen it in other cities too. Again, where they no disrespect, but the Comstat is is very light. It's very watered down. In some cases, they have elected officials pop in and they start chiming in because they're running for re-election. Comstat works. It can be modified. Obviously, it's been modified over the years. The Comstat of 1995 is very different than the Comstat of today. We've learned from our mistakes at Comstat. Comstat was harsh and tough, and it had to be back then. But it works. I've been to many. I used to go to every Comstat for about 2 or 3 year period, and you could see it's an accountability mechanism. It's a resource management tactic. You identify talent. You keep people on their toes, and you worry about, to Pat's point before, and you worry about the victims. And I hope we never forget the victims.
One of the things I liked about Comstat, even though I wasn't a supervisor and I didn't go to Comstat, but if there was a pattern in one area of the city, it could be picked up as if it was occurring in let's say another borough. If it was in the Bronx and Staten Island, I was having the same problem, they could connect up with it. So that was one of the good things about it. And again, the broken windows policy, it worked. It brought crime way, way down. There was accountability. I was in the detective bureau before Comstat and then during Comstat, and we would take cases that would normally be referred to court, minor cases, whether it be an assault or a dispute between neighbors, and we would make arrests on those. We went from a non-arrest oriented unit in the precinct detective squads to an arrest oriented. So instead of referring people to court, we started to engage and put them into the system, make arrest, and then they were adjudicated down the line. A lot of times they would just they would go to adjudication as opposed to a criminal court if it was a minor thing. But it really helped. It brought crime down at great lengths. Obviously, your upper level crimes, homicides, robberies, all of that, burglaries, the enforcement was there for those. Those came down as well. And I think that in politics today, and we don't want to get too political, but if you poll Americans across the country, they're not as worried about the pandemic anymore. They're more worried about crime and, these baloney things that the politicians spout, that we're worried about climate change and stuff like that. That's not what's on the minds of people in 2021 and 2022 going into 22. It's about quality of life and crime across the country. And, let's hope. And I'm just happy that we have 2 commissioners here tonight that kind of fall in line to everything Bill and I have been saving over the last several months with, with this uptick in crime. And I feel like we're kind of vindicated that they're on the same page that we are, So all the tools are right there. They just have to be, the politicians got to grow a pair and be able to push forward and do what has to be done and bring crime down. And it's not only a New York problem, it's across the country.
But I wanted to
just terms to talk about. We're talking about like old terms like carjackings are back, drive-by shootings are back.
That term went away for years. You're right.
Yeah.
You know what I wanted to mention too, because we were mentioning Comstat. They have this new thing called violence interrupters. I would like to have them go to Comstat. I would like to know exactly what they do. I would like to know exactly how much they're paid. I'd like to know exactly. Al Sharpton is one of the his National Action Network.
Bill, you got to have warrants show up at the Comstat.
Yeah, I want to see. How much are you guys paid? What did you do for your pay last month?
I want to know who they are.
Right. How many interactions did you have? How many violent incidents did you interrupt? What horse shit? This is just a money grab. It's a total.
I worked with old timers in the Bronx, and they had a violence interrupter. It was called their nightstick. But
yeah, exactly. I really would like to pull these people into Comstat, have them around the lectern. Okay, who's the leader? Who's the spokesperson? All right, what do you guys do? They'd be like,
Eddie was saying before, and we're talking about Comstat, and then we're talking about broken windows and stuff. And we at NASA we call it STRATCOM, strategic communication. Same thing, same process, but we tried to all work together to solve that problem. Make it efficient, make it effective, right? Respecting the rights of the individual, but at the same time, respecting the right of the victims. 90% of the crime is done by 10% of the population. That's our focus, the 10%. The 90% want to live. The 90% respect us, want us, and need us. When they say defund the police, this is the time where you invest in the police. You invest in a product if you want it to perform better. That's what you got to do in policing. You got to invest in policing if you want it. Otherwise, pull them all back. Let them all do what they do and kill themselves and rob and steal. And then what'll happen? Then go clean it up? No, we can't do that. That's not our society. So we need to invest in policing, put it into the training. Biden comes in and, pissed me off is he could have came one day earlier. He could have gone to that funeral. He didn't have to say anything. He could have just walked in and sat down there and sent the message that I got you back. But he didn't. He came a day later. He puts on his fake tears and he's going to come up with some great strategy. That strategy is already left the port. It's right. We know it's not going to happen. But he's going to throw money because they just keep printing it. And sooner or later, you can't just keep printing money. You got to fix these problems. We need to tweak things. We needed bail reform. We needed some police reform. We needed, to look at the way we police. Stop questioning first had to be, again, tweaked again. But that's okay. We know how to police. You said it before. We know how to police. We've constantly reduced crime, both in the city and our counties out here. We keep our residents safe. But if you take that back and you pull back and you don't let your police do their job, we're going to go spinning back into the 80s, and that's where it's going to be like you're going to be boarded up buildings everywhere you go. That's a numbers joint. That's a crack joint. Don't go in there. Stand on this corner. Don't talk to nobody. Community policing is what is key to our success right now.
Pat, that's why I think you're also seeing a lot of people fleeing some of these major cities to other states that are more friendly to, crime fighting and to public safety. I mean, Florida, real estate in Florida is booming now because everyone's moving to Florida because it's a law and order state,
Well,
it's a full carry state too. I mean, most of your residents carry firearms. So I think that, legitimately carry them. They take safety courses. They carry a firearm. Nobody's too quick to pull out a gun and start shooting somebody because the bullets might be flying back the other way too, So,
but if you look what she's trying to do now, she's sticking into that bill that all apartments in out here in the counties, there's no more going to be any requirements. You can rent your apartment out to 10 different people. My residents in Nassau County will not handle that. That's crazy. What that is the city's bad. Go run out to the county and rent somebody's basement, rent their second floor. But what about what the stress you put on the schools, the police, the hospitals, and everything else? She doesn't care.
Absolutely.
And you'll have food insecurity too.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil, you brought back a memory before. You were talking about the bodegas being targeted. I worked with some guys in the Bronx, and they targeted bodegas a lot, usually for cold Budweiser.
That's pure. They have Budweiser insecurity.
That was the good old days.
And that was for you, Muldoon, if you're listening.
Duty Brown, thank you for the $10 super chat. Lieutenant Peter Pranzo, the great Harlem Raiders. I'm sure Eddie Hartnett knows who Lieutenant Peter Pranzo.
Pete Pranzo, one of the all-time best.
That's right. Great street crime lieutenant, and he's one of our biggest supporters. Thank you, Lieutenant Pete. It's amazing that we're all here. And people are listening to us in the building. So all you people in the building, we're saying things I know that you can't say. And that's why I love to be the voice. And look, we have two of the greatest law enforcement minds in the country here.
I'll translate for Bill. The building he means is One Police Plaza.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I forgot to say that. One Police Plaza. And we also have straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi, so he can speak Italian in case we need some of that too.
That's right. I'll speak Brooklynese. How's that?
Speak Brooklynese. But
I'll get some of my paisans on board to start kicking ass in the street. But yeah, we have everything available to us to turn things around. And now that we've had two commissioners on tonight that agree, the politicians gotta wake up. I mean, they're worried about getting reelected. Turn down crime. You'll get reelected, but turn back the hands of time a little bit. Get it where you can, I used to, in the last probably 10, 15 years, I've gone to Times Square a couple of times with my family and felt absolutely no stress or worry that I was going to get robbed or something bad was going to happen. And in the last 5 years or so, I wouldn't dare go to Times Square with my family now with all this stuff that's going on. I mean, I took my kids years ago, took them on a subway ride and stuff. I wouldn't even think of doing that. There's a video that's circulating around with people defecating, urinating, having sex, all kinds of insanity. And I'm sure everybody, all you got to do is go on YouTube and look for it. It's an out of control system right now, the subway system in New York.
Bail reform changed the voting this past November. It's going to change it again this November because people are sick and tired and they got to go out and they got to vote.
100%.
Well, Bragg was voted in with only 23% of the electorate bothered even to vote. And if you
Yeah.
saw, I mean, there were 10 Democratic candidates for mayor. Eric Adams was the least worst. The other 9 were like,
They were
Marx
unbelievable.
and Lenin, and it was crazy. There was all these defund the police people. He was, as I said, the least worst out of the 10 people that ran for mayor.
And
The
guys,
other
before
thing-
we go, the guys, I'm sorry, Phil, the other things that are on the cops' plate, aside from bail reform, qualified immunity, raise the age, all the defund the police stuff, the revisions in parole, less is more, all that stuff is combining to make crime and violence go way up.
100%.
Well, it's that word they use, the decarceral policies. And Bragg had the balls to say, these policies will make us safer. How is that?
He's got to show the stats on that, Billy. Let me see stats on that. He can't produce them. It's insane to even make that statement. And you brought up the amount of people that voted in the election. He also had $1 million in his coffers from George Soros that most of the other candidates, none of them except him, got. So, I mean, that's where he slam dunked, I guess. And I don't know. I think there was rumor about possibly recalling him. The governor has the right to do that, and she had some type of a talk with him. Let's see where it goes. But this guy sounds very dangerous.
I don't think
in New York City.
it'll never happen. And it's funny, bad guys. We all know, you guys know bad guys as well, if not better than me. Bad guys don't read the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but they pay attention. So bad guys will think. Bad guys in Brooklyn and the Bronx and other places, they'll see the climate in Manhattan. Remember in the old days, you'd grab a guy from Brooklyn or Bronx, and his thing would be, I'm going to Manhattan to get paid. Remember they'd say,
Manhattan makes it, Brooklyn takes it. That's what they used to say.
And they'll keep doing that. They'll say, hey, I'm better off getting arrested if I do get arrested. Better off getting arrested in Times Square than back in my own neighborhood where I might actually go to jail.
And and the same thing goes for Nassau County. Perps from the city, I'm not crossing that border. They don't mess around in Nassau County. You've heard that, Pat, right?
And I'm proud to say, Yonkers, listen, 5 years I did in Yonkers. I had wonderful time there. Great cops in Yonkers, great detectives in Yonkers. They made a mistake sometimes when they crossed over from the Bronx because they knew they were going to get arrested. They were going to maybe get prosecuted more in Westchester than they were going to get prosecuted in the Bronx or Manhattan.
I think that's very true. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Pat.
I got a county exec here now in Nassau County, Bruce Blakeman. He's fighting Hochul every day. I got a district attorney here in Nassau County. She's taking the fight back up to Albany. That we got to repeal a lot of these things. Look, you don't have to take it totally out, but let's go back and sit down and bring the experts to the table. Right? You take away discretion from a judge. What does that do? Aren't they the people that we trust to be the balance in the courtroom when you go in there that says, let's use some common sense? Common sense went out the window. Like I said earlier, it went out with broken windows. It's gone. Right? We got to bring it back inside, sit down and try to figure these things out. But you need to replace them and bring in the right people. Nassau, Suffolk County, both of them put in Republic DAs. That's a message. They're tired of it. And they're not going to pay the taxes they pay just to have the crap come through the neighborhood.
Pat, I think you hit it on the head, and I think that's why Hochul probably read the Riot Act to Bragg, because the midterm elections are coming up, and you're going to see a bloodbath unless something is done, and they know it. They know it. I mean, I couldn't believe that the mayor met with Andrew Cuomo. What is he coming out from under the rocks again? What is he going to run?
He's going to run again, they said.
Yeah, what is he going to run for? I think
they said he may run for attorney general.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah,
exploratory commission.
Are you kidding me? Come on, we already had you for 8 years. Go, leave.
And he doesn't get a pass either. Listen, de Blasio was a terrible mayor, worst mayor in my lifetime. But his policies, not just the COVID stuff, his policies contributed greatly to the decline of New York City too. He shouldn't get off the hook either.
Absolutely.
100%. And a lot of that was he paroled more cop killers than any governor in the history of this state.
Well, he's in bed with the assembly, he's in bed with the Senate. And that's how it works, and normally he has some influence. Let's not push that message right now. But they did. They pushed it. First it was marijuana, then came reforms, discovery, when a rape victim's information gets given to the bad guy within 14 days, what is the purpose of that? How are we giving that victim any kind of solace? It's ridiculous.
He's part of the progressive machine in Washington too. He's right in lockstep with them. So, and I would hate to see him rear his ugly head and run for anything, but he wants to run against the attorney general that brought the investigation against him. It's ridiculous, but who knows what happens with him in the future.
You know, Ed, you should have wrote your book on duty, you know, and hired sergeants to write it for you and made $5 million off it, you know.
Yeah,
that's the equivalent of what he did, you know.
That's
he
right,
wrote the book on duty, went on TV, had the state staff writing his book for him, took $5.1 million for it. And what's wrong with that?
All
Can we get on the Chris
in nursing homes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
can we get on the Chris
15,000
Cuomo
people.
show? Can we get on the Chris Cuomo show? Oh no, he doesn't have a show anymore. That's right.
That's right. He was CNN.
The Fredo show.
The Fredo show.
It's crazy, but look. Hopefully, we have some good things to look forward to in with the midterm elections. And I mean, when people say, "Oh, I don't want to get political," the P in police stands for politics. I'm convinced of that, because without politics, the police get really downgraded. They get disarmed. They get all of their powers taken away from them. So politics and policing is pretty damn important. Wouldn't you say so, Pat?
Absolutely. And look, we want to keep our politics out when we make decisions as bosses, right? We serve all the people. We're the public servant. We protect and serve. But at the other side of it, sometimes you got to say, hey, I got to take the fight. It's not my political view. It's what's protecting my cops. It's what's protecting my residents. You give me a thing like bail reform, we got to go to battle. And I got my head kicked in from the assembly because I went after them. And I said, they're going to do a commercial on me. They want to waste their money. Go ahead. Because like I said, the bad guys don't watch that stuff. They don't read those papers, right? So we just continue to keep our head, go after it, hunt them down, make those arrests, give the victims, what they deserve is some closure, and support our cops. And there's 30,000 cops in that city. That's an army. It's an army. And, we keep supporting them. We're going to do the right thing, and everything should turn out right. We'll turn it around.
Here's a Real with Robo. Thanks for the $5 super chat. I got to read what you wrote because it's funny. I've been sending tweets daily to New York. What else can we civilians do to help? No, Cannon, I won't tell you what I tweet. It's unladylike. I like that. That's okay. But
I know what you could do. Vote. Wherever you live, go out and vote. Vote the right people in. That's what you could do.
100%. That's for sure. You guys were so great to have on as guests, and you're so accessible, and I really appreciate that, Pat. This is the second time you've been on the show. You're a true Irishman. What do we say? What's the equivalent of saying paisan in Irish? I don't know. Do we have a word?
A good lad?
Good lad.
Look, you're a fine lad. You're a fine lad.
Fine lad he is.
You're a fine lad he is.
And you are too. I know you're the first generation that was born in this country, right? Your folks are from Ireland, right?
My friends,
Me too.
my siblings. Oh, good.
Wow.
Where are your people from?
Dublin. My parents got
All
married
right.
in Dublin, came over on the Queen Mary.
Wow. Yeah, my mom was from Kilkenny. My dad was from Limerick. I used to go every summer to the farm. No indoor plumbing. It was wonderful. Had a great time though. But yeah, we'll think of an equivalent paisan word if possible.
You're a fine lad. Yeah.
And Bill, I think this is my 17th appearance.
And you've been on here more than
We
anyone
got to get
else.
him a coat, Bill. He's
But
got to
he acts like he doesn't want to come on. And he always gives me a nudge, like, "Hey, what's going on?"
I still work for a living, but somehow I've been on, and it's truly showing my bravery for coming on so many times. But
you work for
always good.
Brinks, right? You work for Brinks, isn't that true? They bring those cash bags to your house.
Yeah, those guys in that video stole my watches. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they should follow him home now with these Brinks bags. But he's strapped. You're carrying that 9 with the 16 rounds in it.
Oh,
right?
I still have the old trusty Rusty somewhere too. So.
Oh, you got the 38 that you carried when you were a cop in the 3.2, right?
Oh yeah. Me and Wyatt Earp. Yeah.
That's for
Hey,
sure.
Give a shout out to Rodney Harrison. He's doing a great job out in Suffolk. Really starting to turn.
Good man, Rodney.
Really
Yeah,
good
you have
guy.
something I want to have. I want to have Rodney on the show. I want to see if he wants to talk about the Long Island serial killer. That you inherit that too when you take over Suffolk County, right?
Yeah.
He'll solve it. He'll solve it.
That's a tough one. Though,
He
huh?
did some media on that too, Billy, when he first named as PC out there. So yeah, he's on it. I venture to say he's on it pretty good too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, I don't want to keep you any longer. We have you almost here an hour and 10 minutes. I just want to, Pat Ryder, the police commissioner of Nassau County, thank you so much for coming on. You're a real gentleman. And Ed Hartnett, you were my XO when you were a hell of a younger guy. I mean, you were even younger than this picture. That was your Yonkers days.
Yeah, I had
You
worked
were the
on
XO with a 2.4. I forget how you were a real youngster back then. And
I was, yeah. You aged me, Pat.
Yeah.
Bill, rather. You aged me.
That's sure. And there's a picture of Pat in action out in Nassau County.
Look at the guy in the back's got a mask over his eyes and everything. What the hell's that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Out in Nassau County, we don't wear masks no more. Just listen to my county exec. They're all.
Well, she was Hako was saying she's gonna this Wednesday. I think she's gonna terminate that you don't have to wear a mask anymore. I sort of look forward to
putting a mask on you is like putting a mustache on a Mona Lisa.
Oh my God! Now you got to insult me,
Billy.
This show used to be more comedy. Now we're more serious here. You know,
Billy, Commissioner Hartnett was my chief in the intelligence division, and I'm going to say what Tommy Dade said to give a shout out to you, that he loved you, thought you were a great boss in the intelligence division. So I did that shout out, and I think we focused on two key points tonight. One was the victims. That's obviously every politician seems to have forgotten about the victims. And the other thing is we're all in lockstep, and I'm glad that we have two commissioners on. Common sense policing. That's what we're looking for. Just use common sense in this stuff, not bail reform and this idiocy that Bragg wants to come up with. We know what to do. Let us do it.
For sure. Pat Ryder, last words?
Nah, listen, let's just remember the victims. Let's remember our cops. Let's pray for the families of the two officers that were shot and killed, over the last 2 weeks. 26 cops, I think it's 27 now, have been shot and killed around this country. It's got to stop. We're not the bad guys. We're here to help you.
100%. Ed Hartnett, final words?
Guys, God bless all, and let the cops be cops.
That's for sure. Guys, this has been Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, myself and Phil Grimaldi, on behalf of Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder, former Yonkers Police Commissioner Ed Hartnett, an entrepreneur. I don't want to say people are gonna mug you if they think you have that much money, Anyway, thank you guys for being on the show, folks that were listening. Thank you so much. Have a safe night.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night, guys.
God bless.
One episode